The stars were burning above Prime, but they brought no comfort to Ambassador Ox as he stood on the crumbling balcony of the last government tower. His four pale eyes watched the horizon where enemy ships continued their endless bombardment. The Dominion had been attacking his world for 3 cycles now, and his people were dying by the thousands every single day. Ox was a tall being with translucent blue skin and long fingers that trembled as he held the communication device. Behind him, the council chamber was filled with the remaining leaders of his civilization. They were scared. They were tired. They had lost hope. "The shield generators will fail within 2 days," reported General, his voice heavy with defeat. "After that, the ground forces will land. Our military is destroyed. We have nothing left to fight with." Ox closed his eyes. The Confederacy had existed for 10,000 years. They were a peaceful species, devoted to art and science and the pursuit of knowledge. They had no great armies. They had no powerful weapons. When the Dominion arrived in their system and demanded total surrender, they had tried to negotiate. They responded by destroying their orbital stations and killing millions. "There must be something we can do," said Counselor, her voice breaking. "Someone in the galaxy must be willing to help us." But Ox knew the truth. They had sent messages to every known civilization in their sector. The responses were all the same. The Galactic Assembly expressed deep concern but could not intervene. The Trading Federation offered thoughts and prayers but no ships. The mighty fleet, legendary protectors of the Galactic Core, did not respond at all. No one was coming to save them. That night, as the bombs continued to fall and his city burned, Ox made a decision born of pure desperation. He ordered his technicians to send one final message. Not through the normal channels, not to any known civilization. He told them to aim the signal into the unexplored regions of space, into the dark corners of the galaxy where no had ever traveled. "This is madness," his aide said. "There is nothing out there but empty space and dead worlds." "Perhaps," Ox replied, "but we have tried everything else. If there is even the smallest chance that someone is listening, we must take it." The message was simple. It contained their coordinates, a description of their situation, and a plea that Ox wrote himself with tears in his eyes. "We are the Confederacy. We are dying. Our children are dying. We have no weapons to defend ourselves. We have no allies to call upon. If anyone can hear this message, if anyone in the vast darkness of space has the power to help, we beg you, please come, please save us." The signal traveled through space at the speed of light, passing through nebulas and asteroid fields and empty void. It traveled for 3 days before it finally reached a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Commander Daniel Hayes was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when the alert came through. He was stationed aboard the orbital platform called Sentinel, a military installation that monitored deep space for any signs of contact. For 15 years, Daniel had served in the United Earth Space Command, and in all that time, they had never received a message from beyond their solar system. Most people believed humanity was alone in the universe. That belief died at exactly 3:47 hours on a Tuesday morning. "Sir, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Price, her fingers flying across her console. "We are receiving a transmission from outside the solar system. It is definitely not natural. Someone is sending us a message." Daniel set down his coffee and walked to her station. His heart was pounding in his chest. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for since they first looked up at the stars. First contact with alien life. The message took hours to decode. Worked with the station's advanced computers to translate the alien language, matching patterns and building a linguistic framework from scratch. By morning, she had a rough translation ready. Daniel read the message 3 times. Then he sat down heavily in his chair and stared at the wall for a long moment. "They are asking for help," he finally said. "Someone out there is being attacked, and they are asking us to save them." He immediately contacted Earth Command and requested an emergency connection to Admiral Christopher Grant. The Admiral was the highest-ranking officer in the Space Command, a man who had served for 40 years and commanded respect from everyone who knew him. He listened to Daniel's report in silence, his weathered face showing no emotion as the words sank in. "You are certain this is genuine?" the Admiral asked. "Yes, sir. The signal originated from a star system approximately 14 light-years away. The message contains detailed information about their species, their enemy, and their situation. This is not a hoax or a natural phenomenon. Someone is out there and they are dying." Admiral Grant was quiet for a long time. He stood by the window of his office and looked out at the Earth below. Billions of people lived on that planet, going about their daily lives with no idea that the universe had just changed forever. "What are our options?" he asked. His aide, Captain Laura, stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, we have no idea what we would be getting into. We do not know this species. We do not know their enemy. This could be a trap. It could be a war we cannot win. The smart thing to do would be to observe and gather more information before committing any resources." The Admiral nodded slowly. "That is the smart thing to do." He turned back to face her, and there was something in his eyes that Laura had never seen before. It was not the calculating look of a military strategist. It was something simpler and more powerful. "But someone is dying out there, Captain. Someone sent a message into the darkness hoping that anyone would hear them. They have no weapons, they have no allies. Their children are being killed, and their message found us." He paused and took a deep breath. "What kind of people would we be if we received that message and did nothing?" Laura opened her mouth to respond, but she found that she had no words. Admiral Grant straightened his uniform and made his decision. "Contact all fleet commanders. I want every available ship ready to launch within 72 hours. We are going to answer that call." The message spread through the military like electricity. Soldiers who had spent their careers training for a war that might never come suddenly had a purpose. Engineers worked through the night preparing ships for deep space travel. Pilots ran simulation after simulation, preparing for combat against an enemy they had never seen. Humanity had received a call for help from the stars. And humanity was going to answer. Part 2, The Armada Rises. The shipyards of Luna had never seen activity like this. Day and night, thousands of workers swarmed over massive warships, loading weapons and supplies, and running final checks on systems that would soon be tested in ways no one could predict. The docks echoed with the sounds of machinery and shouted orders, and the deep hum of engines coming to life. Captain Cole stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant and watched the chaos through the main viewport. The Valiant was the largest ship humanity had ever built, a mountain of steel and firepower that stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. She carried enough weapons to level a city and enough armor to survive almost anything. Had commanded her for 3 years, and he knew every inch of her hull like he knew his own body. "Final crew transfers are complete, Captain," reported Commander Torres, his executive officer. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than most computers. "All departments report ready for departure." Nodded but did not respond immediately. He was thinking about what lay ahead. They were about to travel farther than any human had ever gone, into a part of space that no one from Earth had ever seen. They were going to fight an enemy they knew nothing about, to save a species they had never met. The odds were impossible to calculate because they simply did not have enough information. And yet, when Admiral Grant had given the order, not a single officer had refused. Not one soldier had asked to be left behind. The entire fleet had volunteered for this mission, knowing full well that many of them might not come back. That said something about humanity, thought, something important. The fleet gathered in orbit around Mars for final assembly. 47 battlecruisers, each one a fortress of destruction. 112 destroyers, fast and deadly, 200 support vessels carrying supplies, medical equipment, and the Marine battalions that would fight on the ground. And at the center of it all, the Valiant, the tip of the spear that humanity was about to throw into the unknown. Admiral Grant addressed the entire fleet through a broadcast that reached every ship, every station, every soldier who was about to embark on this impossible journey. Men and women of the United Earth Space Command, his voice rang out across the void. 3 days ago, we received a message from the stars. A species we have never met, a people we have never known, reached out to us in their darkest hour. They asked for help. They asked if anyone in the universe cared enough to save them from destruction. The Admiral paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. We are going to show them that someone does. We are going to show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Some of you may not return from this mission. I will not pretend otherwise, but I promise you this. What we do in the coming days will echo through history. Our children will tell stories about this moment. The universe will remember that when someone cried out for help, humanity answered. Good luck and Godspeed. The fleet began its journey at 600 hours on a Thursday morning. The ships aligned their hyperspace drives and, one by one, vanished into the darkness between stars. The journey would take 14 days, and during that time, the crews prepared themselves in every way they could. Chief Engineer Mitchell lived in the engine room of the Valiant during those 2 weeks. He was a stocky man with hands that were permanently stained with grease and a mind that understood machines better than people. His job was to keep the ship running no matter what, and he took that responsibility more seriously than anything else in his life. These engines were designed for patrol duty, he told his team as they worked. Short trips, easy routes, nothing too stressful. We are about to push them harder than they have ever been pushed. I need every system running at peak efficiency. No shortcuts, no excuses. Lives depend on what we do down here. On the medical deck, Dr. Wright organized supplies and trained her staff for the challenges ahead. She was a calm woman with gentle hands and eyes that had seen too much suffering in her career. She had treated soldiers from a dozen conflicts, patched up wounds that should have been fatal, and held the hands of young men and women as they took their last breaths. We have no idea what physiology looks like, she told her medical team. Their biology could be completely different from ours. We need to be ready to learn fast and adapt faster. When the fighting starts, wounded are going to come through those doors and they are going to need us to save them. Human or alien, it does not matter. Every life we can save is a victory. In the Marine barracks, Sergeant Park drilled his soldiers until they could fight in their sleep. He was a compact man with a quiet voice and eyes that missed nothing. He had served in ground combat for 15 years, and he knew that battles were won not by heroes, but by teams who trusted each other absolutely. We do not know what the enemy looks like, he told his battalion. We do not know how they fight or what weapons they carry, but I know what we are capable of. I know that every single one of you will stand your ground when it matters. We are going down there to protect people who cannot protect themselves. That is the mission. That is the only thing that matters. The days passed slowly as the fleet traveled through hyperspace. Soldiers wrote letters to their families, not knowing if they would ever send them. Officers studied what little information they had about thee and the Dominion. Everyone tried to prepare for something that no human had ever experienced. On the night before they arrived, Captain Cole walked through the corridors of the Valiant. He visited the engine room, where Mitchell and his team were making final adjustments. He stopped by the medical bay, where Dr. Wright was checking her supplies for the 100th time. He spent an hour in the Marine barracks, talking with Sergeant Park and his soldiers about what they might face. Everywhere he went, he saw the same thing in their eyes. Fear, yes. No sane person could face the unknown without fear, but beneath the fear there was something stronger: determination, pride, a deep and powerful conviction that what they were doing was right. When he returned to the bridge, Commander Torres was waiting for him. "We drop out of hyperspace in 6 hours, Captain," she said. "The fleet is ready." Looked at the star map on the main display. Somewhere ahead, a world was burning. A people were dying, and they were counting on humanity to save them. "Then let us go save some lives," he said quietly. The fleet prepared for battle. The armada that would introduce humanity to the galaxy was about to arrive. And nothing would ever be the same again. Part 3, First Contact. The sky above Prime had been filled with enemy ships for so long that the survivors had stopped looking up. Hope had become a memory, something that belonged to the past before the came. The remaining huddled in underground shelters, listening to the endless thunder of bombs and waiting for the end to come. Ambassador Ox had not slept in 3 days. He spent every hour in the communications center, monitoring the dying frequencies of his civilization. City after city went silent as they advanced. The last military outpost fell on the second day. The shield generators that protected the capital were failing, their power reserves nearly exhausted. "The shields will collapse by morning," General reported, his voice hollow. "They have assembled landing forces. When the shields fall, they will begin the final assault." Ox nodded slowly. He had sent his desperate message into the void 7 days ago. No response had come. No one was listening. No one was coming. His people would die and the galaxy would forget they had ever existed. Then the sensors screamed. Every monitoring station on the planet lit up at once. Warning alarms blared through the command center as operators scrambled to understand what was happening. Something was coming out of hyperspace. Something big. "Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace," shouted a technician. "Count is, I cannot, this is impossible." Ox pushed through the chaos to reach the main display. His 4 eyes went wide as he saw what was appearing in orbit above his world. Ships, dozens of ships, then hundreds. They kept coming, pouring out of hyperspace in a flood of steel and fury that filled the sky. These were not vessels. These were not ships from any species in the galactic database. They were angular and brutal, covered in weapons that bristled from every surface. They looked like they had been built for one purpose and one purpose only: war. The Dominion fleet had surrounded Prime for months. They had grown comfortable in their siege, confident that no one would challenge their conquest. Warlord commanded the blockade from his flagship, the Crushing Fist, and he had not expected any resistance. The arrival of the human fleet caught him completely off guard. "What is this?" he demanded, his massive form rising from his command throne. There were large beings, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin and eyes that burned with predatory intelligence. They had conquered a dozen species and enslaved millions. They feared nothing. "Unknown vessels, Warlord," his tactical officer reported. "We have no record of this species in our database. They are positioning themselves between us and the planet." Bared his teeth in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Fools. They come to die alongside signal the fleet, destroy them." But before they could act, a transmission cut through all frequencies. It reached every ship in orbit, every warrior, and every survivor on the surface below. "This is Captain Cole of the United Earth Space Command vessel Valiant." In the command center on Prime, Ox listened to the alien voice with disbelief. The being spoke in a language his translators had never encountered, but the equipment quickly adapted, rendering the words into something he could understand. "You are engaged in an unprovoked attack on a civilian population. Your actions violate every principle of basic decency that any civilized species should hold. You have one opportunity to withdraw your forces and leave this system. If you refuse, we will remove you by force." The message ended. Silence fell across the command center. General was the first to speak. "Who are they?" "I do not know," Ox whispered, "but they answered." In orbit, Warlord was laughing. The sound echoed through his bridge as his officers watched nervously. These creatures dare to threaten the Dominion. They are outnumbered. They know nothing of war. He turned to his communications officer. Send a response. Tell them that they do not negotiate with insects. Tell them to run back to whatever hole they crawled out of, or we will crush them along with the... The response was transmitted. Captain Cole listened to it calmly, his face showing no emotion. When it ended, he looked at Commander Tors. Well, he said quietly, I gave them a chance. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is the captain, weapons free, engage at will. The human fleet attacked. The first vessel exploded 43 seconds later. A destroyer called the Swift Thunder had targeted it with a concentrated barrage of plasma fire that overwhelmed its shields in seconds. The explosion lit up the void like a new star, and for a moment, everyone in the system simply stared. Then chaos erupted. Human ships surged forward in formations that they had never seen before. They moved with a coordination that seemed almost impossible, supporting each other, covering weaknesses and concentrating fire on key targets. When vessels maneuvered to counter them, the humans adapted instantly, changing tactics on the fly. On the Valiant, Captain Cole commanded from the center of the storm. Helm, bring us around to bearing 270. Weapons, target that cruiser on our port side. Coordinate with the destroyer wing. I want suppressing fire on their left flank. The bridge crew moved with practiced precision. Lieutenant Palmer managed the tactical systems, calling out targets and damage reports in a steady voice. Commander Tors relayed orders to the other ships, keeping the entire fleet functioning as a single unit. They fought back with savage ferocity. Their weapons were powerful and their ships were well armored. Human vessels took hits. Alarms blared. Crews fought fires and sealed breaches while their ships continued to attack. But the humans did not stop. They did not retreat. They kept pushing forward with a determination that they had never encountered. Every time they thought they had gained an advantage, the humans found a way to turn it around. On the surface of Prime, Ox watched the battle unfold on the command displays. Tears were streaming from his 4 eyes as he saw the fleet, the force that had terrorized his people for so long, beginning to crumble. They came, he said softly. Someone actually came. Beside him, his aide could only nod in stunned silence. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, strangers were dying to save them. And neither of them could understand why. Part 4. The Battle of Prime. The space above Prime had become a graveyard of burning ships. Wreckage drifted through the void, the remains of vessels from both sides that had been torn apart by weapons designed to destroy. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and neither side showed any sign of stopping. Captain Cole had not sat down since the fighting began. He moved across the bridge of the Valiant, issuing orders, studying displays, and making the split-second decisions that meant life or death for thousands of people. His uniform was stained with sweat, and his voice had grown hoarse from shouting commands, but his mind remained sharp. "Status report," he demanded. Commander Tors consulted her displays. "We have lost 7 destroyers and 2 cruisers. 31 other ships have sustained damage ranging from minor to critical. Estimated enemy losses are significantly higher. We have destroyed at least 40 of their capital ships and an unknown number of smaller vessels. Their command ship, still operational. Warlord has pulled it back behind his remaining forces. He is using his fleet as a shield." Studied the tactical display. They were fighting defensively now, a dramatic change from the aggressive posture they had shown at the start of the battle. They had clearly underestimated the human fleet, and that mistake had cost them dearly. But they were still dangerous. Their weapons were powerful, and they had the numbers to cause serious damage if the humans grew careless. "Signal the fleet," said. "We push through their center. I want every ship to concentrate fire on the vessels protecting their flagship. We end this by taking out their leader." The human fleet surged forward again. The Valiant led the charge, her massive guns blazing at anything that dared to block her path. Vessels tried to intercept her, but the supporting destroyers cut them down before they could get close. On the crushing fist, Warlord was experiencing an emotion he had not felt in decades: fear. These humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They took losses that would have broken any other fleet, yet they kept coming. When his ships destroyed one of theirs, the others closed ranks and hit back even harder. "We cannot hold," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling. "Their firepower is overwhelming our defenses." "Then we fall back," snarled. "Signal the fleet. We retreat to the outer system and regroup." It was too late. The Valiant broke through the defensive line and came face to face with the crushing fist. For a moment, the two flagships hung in space, separated by only a few kilometers of void. "Fire everything," ordered quietly. The Valiant unleashed the full power of her weapons. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and kinetic projectiles all struck the flagship at once. The shields flickered and died. The hull buckled and tore. Secondary explosions rippled across the massive ship as critical systems failed. Warlord had time for one final roar of defiance before his bridge was consumed by fire. The destruction of the flagship broke the fleet. Without their leader, without their command structure, the remaining ships lost cohesion. Some tried to flee into hyperspace. Others continued fighting in isolated pockets, but they were quickly overwhelmed. Within 2 hours, the battle in orbit was over. But the fight for Prime was just beginning. While the space battle raged overhead, they had landed thousands of troops on the surface. They held the major cities and had been systematically eliminating the population. The orbital victory meant nothing if those ground forces were not stopped. Sergeant Park was already on his way down when the flagship exploded. His shook violently as it entered the atmosphere, anti-aircraft fire streaking past the windows. Around him, 50 Marines sat in silence, weapons ready, faces grim. 2 minutes to landing zone, the pilot announced. "We are taking fire from multiple positions." "Can you get us down?" asked. "I can get you down, Sergeant. What happens after that is your problem." They hit the ground hard, and the rear doors burst open. Was the first one out, his rifle already up and scanning for targets. They had landed in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful city. Now it was rubble and ash and the bodies of civilians who had not been able to escape. "Contact front," someone shouted. Soldiers emerged from the broken buildings, their weapons spitting energy at the human Marines. Dove behind a shattered wall and returned fire. His Marines spread out around him, taking cover and engaging the enemy with the efficiency of soldiers who had trained together for years. They were big, they were strong. Their weapons were deadly, but humans had been fighting wars for their entire history. They knew how to use cover. They knew how to move as a team. They knew that victory came not from individual heroism but from trusting the person beside you. The first position fell within minutes. Led his Marines forward, clearing building after building, pushing the enemy back street by street. Other Marine units were doing the same across the city, a coordinated assault that squeezed them from all directions. And then they found the survivors. Hidden in the basement of a collapsed building, 30 civilians huddled together in terror. They were mostly children and elderly, the ones who could not fight and could not run. When the humans appeared, they screamed and tried to hide, expecting the same brutality they had suffered from the. Lowered his weapon and held up his hands. He did not know their language, but some things needed no translation. "It is okay," he said softly. "We are here to help you. No one is going to hurt you anymore." One of the children, a small being with wide, frightened eyes, stared at for a long moment. Then slowly, she walked forward and took his hand. Behind her, the other survivors began to emerge from their hiding places. Dr. Wright arrived with the medical teams an hour later. She had set up field hospitals throughout the city, treating wounded Marines and civilians alike. The physiology was different from human biology in ways she had never imagined, but she learned quickly. She adapted. She improvised. She saved lives. By nightfall, the ground forces had been destroyed or captured. The city was free. And for the first time in 3 cycles, they looked up at their sky and saw no enemy ships. They saw human ships instead, protectors where there had been destroyers, hope where there had been despair. The Battle of Prime was over. Humanity had won. Part 5. The Galaxy Takes Notice. 3 days after the battle, the fires were finally dying. The skies above Prime were clear for the first time in 3 cycles, and the survivors emerged from their shelters to see a world that had changed forever. Their cities were in ruins. Their population had been reduced by half, but they were alive and they were free. Human ships remained in orbit, a protective shield against any attempt at retaliation. On the surface, Marine battalions helped clear rubble and search for survivors. Medical teams treated the wounded and the sick. Engineers worked to restore power and clean water to the devastated population centers. Ambassador Ox watched all of this with a mixture of awe and confusion that he could not put into words. These strange beings from an unknown world had crossed the vastness of space to help his people. They had fought and died for complete strangers, and now they were staying to help rebuild what they had destroyed. None of it made any sense. He requested a formal meeting with the human commanders, and that request was granted without hesitation. A shuttle carried him up to the Valiant, where he was escorted through corridors filled with tired but proud soldiers who nodded respectfully as he passed. The conference room was simple by standards. A large table surrounded by chairs, with windows that looked out at the stars. Admiral Christopher Grant had arrived from Earth with reinforcement vessels, and he was waiting there alongside Captain Cole and several other officers. Ox studied them carefully as he entered. These humans were small compared to his people, and soft, with no natural armor or claws or any obvious weapons. Yet they had defeated the Dominion, one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. There was something behind their eyes that he was only beginning to understand. "Please sit," Admiral Grant said, gesturing to a chair. His voice was warm and gentle, nothing like what Ox had expected from a warrior who had just won such a decisive victory. Ox sat. For a long moment, he simply looked at the humans across the table, searching for the words to express what he was feeling. Finally, he spoke. "Why?" The single word hung in the air. Admiral Grant tilted his head slightly. "Why what, Ambassador? Why did you come? Why did you fight for us? Why did your people die for mine?" Ox could feel his emotions threatening to overwhelm him, but he pressed on. "You did not know us. You owed us nothing. We have nothing to offer you. We are a broken civilization on a ruined world. There was no benefit to you in saving us. So why?" Admiral Grant considered the question for a long time. When he finally answered, his voice was quiet but steady. "Ambassador, where we come from, we have a saying. The measure of a civilization is not how it treats the powerful, but how it treats those who cannot help themselves." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. "Your people sent a message into the darkness. You said that your children were dying. You asked if anyone in the universe cared enough to help you. That message found us, and once we heard it, there was no question of what we would do." "But your soldiers died," Ox said. "I watched them fall in battle. I saw them risk their lives to save my people in the cities. How can you ask such sacrifice from them for strangers?" Captain Cole spoke for the first time. "They were not asked, Ambassador. They volunteered, every single one of them. When the order came to mobilize, not one soldier refused to go. They knew the risks. They knew some of them would not come back, and they went anyway." "But why?" Ox repeated, his voice breaking. Dr. Wright, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the room, stepped forward. She had spent the last 3 days treating wounded, learning their physiology on the fly, saving lives through sheer determination. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was clear. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply. "Because when someone is hurting and you have the power to help, you help. It is not complicated, Ambassador. It is just what decent beings do." Ox was silent for a long time. In all his years of diplomatic service, in all his studies of galactic civilizations, he had never encountered anything like this. The galaxy he knew operated on mutual benefit and calculated self-interest. Species helped each other when there was something to gain. No one sacrificed for strangers. "The galaxy does not work this way," he finally said. Admiral Grant smiled slightly. "Then perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn a new way." The meeting lasted for several hours. They discussed the immediate needs of the people, the assistance that humanity could provide, and the possibility of a formal alliance between their civilizations. By the end, Ox had made a decision that would shape the future of both their peoples. "The Confederacy will stand with humanity," he announced. "Whatever challenges you face, whatever enemies you encounter, we will be beside you. This is not payment for what you have done. No payment would be sufficient. This is friendship. This is family." Admiral Grant reached across the table and clasped Ox's hand in the human gesture of agreement. "We accept, Ambassador, and we look forward to learning from your people as much as we hope you will learn from us." In the weeks that followed, word of Prime spread across the galaxy. The story seemed impossible at first. A previously unknown species had emerged from unexplored space, answered a desperate plea for help, and defeated the Dominion in open battle. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Assembly demanded information about these humans. The Trading Federation sent diplomatic overtures, hoping to establish profitable relations. Other species, those who had lived in fear of them for generations, began to wonder if perhaps there was hope after all. And in the shadows, the remnants of the Dominion gathered their remaining forces and swore vengeance. They had been humiliated by these newcomers, and they would not rest until humanity was destroyed. But that was a problem for another day. For now, the survivors of Prime were rebuilding their world with the help of friends they had never expected to find. Human soldiers walked the streets of cities, sharing meals with the people they had saved. Engineers from both species worked together to restore what had been destroyed. Children who had known nothing but fear began to laugh again. And across the galaxy, civilizations that had long believed themselves alone in their struggles began to hear a new message. A message that said someone out there cared. A message that said help would come if you asked for it. Humanity had announced itself to the universe. And the universe would never be the same again.